Hello world, my name is Brandon Jacobson, and this video is going to be about how to pass your PMP exam with minimal studying for people who are good at standardized tests. So how do you know if you're good at standardized tests? Well, if you've taken lengthy standardized tests and you're one of the first people done, and you're also get higher than normal scores, whether you're familiar with the topic or not, then you're probably good at just standardized test taking. And so this video is for people like that. Not only am I good at standardized tests, I'm an awful procrastinator. So I wait until it becomes this horrible dread and then I cram study. And that's not good, healthy studying habits. But hopefully this video helps people like me who just wants to get the high level information and then use your standardized test taking abilities to pass it. And so if you see here, I passed my PMP exam with all above target. And again, I did not study for months or go to a boot camp. And so I'm going to give you the resources I used and how I did it. This YouTube channel is primarily for Python programming, robotics, AI, as I build my own digital assistant named Shane, like Jarvis from the Iron Man movies and comics. If that somehow interests you, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if this helps you in your PMP exam, please leave a comment and let me know it helped you, and give it a like. And so the first resource I used was this one. It's Ricardo Vargas going over the 6th edition of the PMBOK guide. And he does probably the best job of breaking down how all the processes in the knowledge areas fit together. And so I have a very low attention span. So imagine that I'm good with standardized testing, I have a low attention span, and I procrastinate, right? So it makes it very stressful for taking tests, although I do pass them. And so I do, with the low attention span, if you're like that, I watch all the videos I recommend here at 1.5 speed. And so I think he's from Portugal. And so he has kind of a thick accent, but nonetheless, he does a great job. So I watched it at 1.5 speed, and it gives you just a high level knowledge of all the processes. And the reason why I say high level is, in my personal opinion, is the PMP exam was too vague. The questions were too high level. And I'm more of a left brain logic math guy. And so if you give me standardized testing that also has like word problems, sometimes I can answer it just by looking at the answers and only very quickly looking at the question, right? Because they're concrete answers. Where I feel the PMP exam was so vague that I just didn't feel like I clutched each answer, right? I was reluctantly pressing B or C. And it's just very high level. So I don't recommend, unless you're that type of person that needs to know everything to feel confident, not spending too much time memorizing every single piece of the PMBOK guide in terms of all the different areas like integration, monitoring and controlling, all of that. Just know the high level, and this video gives you the best high level breakdown of it. So the second resource I recommend, the second and third resource is going to be from the same person, this David McLaughlin. I think that's how you say it. I believe he's from Australia or New Zealand. And again, I watch these videos at 1.5. He's very encouraging. So if you need encouragement and motivation, then go ahead and watch it normal speed. But the first one I recommend is this one. It's 150 PMP Questions and Answers. Again, I watched it at 1.5 speed. But when you watch this, don't necessarily focus on the answers, right? Just don't memorize all 150. What I recommend is how he underlines and approaches each question. So if you're like me and you're good at standardized testing, then what you've learned is really the last question, right? Just the last part of the question, and specifically only certain words of that question. And then looking at the answers, usually without even knowing much about the topic, you can figure out tests, right? Standardized tests. Well, what he does is he does a good job of highlighting or underlining only certain words of the question. He reads the whole thing for you, the audience, but just kind of keep track of how he underlines certain words. And I feel personally that the PMBOK guide is very repetitive. And when we get to the next video where we discuss Agile, it's even more repetitive. But eventually you'll learn this kind of like rhythm and pacing to how the one I went through was contracted through Pearson VUE. And I don't know if they get to decide what's in the questions or if it's the PMI Institute or if it's PMBOK themselves. But either way, you feel like a rhythm and a pace. And if you just watch this video, watch how he goes over the questions, highlights certain things, and then approaches each question. You'll see the rhythm I'm talking about, and you'll be able to answer the questions without even knowing too much about very specific parts of the PMBOK. And so that's the first resource I recommend. He's very good. He's a very good speaker as well. And that gets us into the second topic, or the third resource, I'm sorry. And that is these 200 Agile questions. I didn't make it all the way through this video, to be honest. I got through about 100 of these because Agile, and you'll see this during the test, it's very conceptual, right? The biggest concept I noticed was servant leader. And so what that means is placing the team over yourself or over the company even. And so if you get questions, then you kind of know that the answer will be something about servant leadership, right? So you taking out the time as the scrum master, the product owner, taking action, right? So instead of escalating it to your bosses or forcing your team to do something, you, the project manager, program manager, product owner, you take some sort of action. So if it says the question is something about like you are the product owner, the answer is usually the product owner taking an action. That's servant leadership. The second one is about win-win, but not in the PMBOK compromise style. It's some sort of conflict happens and you need to do something that creates the project getting back on track. And so I just felt like out of the 180 questions on at least mine, about half of them were Agile, and they were so vague, and they were very servant leadership first, and then second was this whole team concept, getting it to the end goal. And so with those two resources together, the PMBOK video and the Agile video, I felt confident in most of my answers, although it became so repetitive. The first time I felt like I clinched it, right? B, yeah. And then it felt like the same question. I was like, okay, C, yeah. And then just like I said, very repetitive. And so the test is comprised of 3 knowledge areas. At least mine, again, I went through a center, and it's called Pearson VUE. And the first 60 questions, and then you get a 10-minute break. You get another 60 questions, a 10-minute break, and then you finalize the 60 questions. They're supposed to be the 3 areas. I didn't notice it. It felt like similar questions throughout the whole thing. Overall, very repetitive, in my opinion. Very high level, more than in the details, knowing every single win-loss type, manager style, all that. It was very high level. And then the third one was knowing the overall concept of what a project manager is. And so those are the kind of the trends that I noticed. And I passed all above target in all 3 areas with just these 3 resources, I promise you. Another common question is practice tests. I highly recommend practice tests, but full disclosure, I took 0 practice tests. I'm not lying, I promise you. It's not how I learn. I don't do well by taking, unless that specific question is gonna be on your PMP exam, I don't wanna see it. To me, it's almost a negative reinforcement where people memorize that question and that answer. And if you're not familiar with how they develop standardized testing, is they know the study materials that's available, and they'll change key words and you might get tripped up. And so if you're one of those people who memorizes every single question and every single answer, and you repeatedly take the same practice test, You might be memorizing the letter C more than the actual answer that relates to the question. So again, I read on Reddit, I did a lot of Reddit searching. It seems like practice tests are the key to success. And so I would be remiss to say don't take them. But for me, Brandon Jacobson, I did not take any practice areas. And so I hope you enjoy this video. I wish you the best of luck on your PMP exam. And if for some reason this video out of all the other ones really helped you, then please like the original videos more than mine, but leave me a like as it does help. And thanks for watching. Goodbye, world.